Well, hi everyone. Thanks very much for attending and being in on this opening session of session one of cooling off your IC. And in this session, we're going to talk about how IC actually can be resolved. That this whole story that you hear that IC is treatable but not curable is a myth, and that it's really important that we get that straight from the get-go. And we're going to show you in this webinar series and in this particular session particularly how and why that's possible. And so let's get started. This is an interactive series where you're going to be telling me what's important for you to know about IC. So your participation is really, really important. We're going to be sending you surveys on a regular basis 2 to 3 days before the session, the scheduled session is, so that we can get your questions about the previous session that was done as well as the one that's coming up, asking your questions about IC and the particular topics that are involved. So this course is about giving you the big picture of this healing approach and showing you why the therapies that I'll give you work. We'll spend about 60 to 90 minutes on each session, and we'll answer questions at the end or during the session. And if you want to, on your control panel to the right, there's an ability to click on a yellow hand, and clicking on that hand will allow you to be seen on my screen so that I can unclick you, and you can either ask your question or you can type your question in. If you type your question in and hold your hand up, then I'll look for that in my control panel so that I can respond to your question. This is as good as it gets when we can connect live and be able to interact with one another. So I really support you trying to be interactive with this call. We're also going to be hosting a Facebook page, and this Facebook page will allow us to interact with one another in threads that are created by each of you, and I'll be there actively reading and watching your comments and discussions, so that we can be able to discuss these various aspects of the management of IC. We're going to be having a bonus sessions on August 8th and the 22nd, and there'll be other things that we'll be setting up for you as we go along. I'm going to be sending you some resources and extra material as we move through the webinar series, and we'll also talk about websites such as foodsheal.com and drbilldeaton.com that will give you extra information regarding this approach so that you can make what I would consider a very good informed consent regarding taking a look very seriously at this information and at this method of healing IC. There's no question that this is not mainstream, but how is mainstream doing for you right now in terms of your medical problem that you have? And what we're trying to do here is introduce you to a new technique that can help you not only be more comfortable with respect to your IC, but in the long run, it will heal your IC. So it's natural to feel overwhelmed with this material. It's new, it's different, it's a different way of looking at healing, it's a different way of looking at the human biology. But I've streamlined this course in such a way that only the very important nuggets that are important for you to know are the ones that are emphasized and brought out in this material. That way, you have a clean shot at being able to apply these methodologies in order to begin healing your IC. And furthermore, most importantly, you have the information to back up what you're doing, so you understand totally why you do what you do in order to bring about healing. Because this, in the end, will give you a sense of trust in the system, that it takes time to heal. We'll talk about that as we move along. I would also suggest that you try to be open to viewing disease in a different way. We've alluded to that a minute ago, but I really would encourage you not to hold judgment about the right way or wrong way of doing this kind of work. It is a way. It is just not, and as you know, there are many different ways to approach this problem of IC. But I know that this approach will work. I know that if you stay on the path, if you stick on this path, you will be able to manage your IC and be able to ultimately heal your IC. This is the promise that I have. You know, in a short period of time in my practice, 91% of patients got a 50% reduction in their symptomatology in just 6 weeks doing aloe and nutritional work that was actually incomplete. None of them really did it perfectly. So if I can offer you a 50% reduction in symptoms by just doing aloe vera gel and nutrition, my gosh, you're light years ahead of where you would be otherwise. So I want to start with a series of principles that will take us through this material today. And the first is that in order to really become involved and create attention to this matter of changing lifestyle, nutritional behavior patterns, taking herbs, doing things that are not normally in your awareness at this point, requires that you create this type of healing approach and make it a priority. Make it something that, come hell or high water, daily you're going to be focused on this information. And I guarantee you this, that if you elect to really put yourself into this position of making this a priority, that everything else that are distractions, everything that potentially can affect you in some way in terms of taking you out of being attentive to this kind of information, it will you'll begin to see changes. But in terms of making this healing occur for you, in making it a priority, you have to also realize that your mind is going to resist. It's going to say, who says that this is really true? Who says that this can really work? And wouldn't you rather be playing with the kids or the grandkids or whatever, because the mind will always resist change. So what I'm saying here is that make it a priority, but also begin with this work with baby steps, with the idea that I'm going to take little steps day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, and I'm going to continue to make little significant steps all along the way in order for me to gain control of these symptoms that are debilitating to me right now. Who's kidding who? I see it as a debilitating disease. And don't you want this for yourself? So in order for this to happen, you've got to make this a priority and to be willing to take those baby steps. Avoid the day-to-day distractions. And as you do this work, I guarantee you one other thing, that you will gain greater clarity as to why you do what you're doing, and you'll also understand with greater clarity that you're getting better. Sometimes you see, when we're on a healing path, we don't know how sick we were until we look back. And then we see with great clarity, oh, I see what has happened for me. I am better. I am better. And so as this goes along, you'll be able to see with great clarity how you're moving along. This material is based on the energy science of Ayurveda. This energy science discipline is 5,000 years old. It has grown out of the yoga tradition, and it viewed all of nature as being composed of 10 pairs of vibrational frequencies, or what are now termed qualities. But from an energy perspective, these 10 pairs are actually vibrational frequencies in the world, in our world. Since you and I are part of nature, you are also composed of those 10 pairs of vibrational frequencies. So, foods that contain, or that are outside of you, that contain the 10 pair of vibrational frequencies or qualities, those same qualities are in you. So if you ingest those foods, you are ingesting those qualities. This is a very different way of looking at nutrition, but I can tell you that this is far superior to where and what kind of information you're getting right now. It is completely solid. There are no holes in this. This is completely solid and scientific to boot. As a matter of fact, I would say that it's even more scientific than with the materials that you get from your matter science world of nutrition and how to manage your IC. So since foods are you and you are foods, they can directly impact you by delivering qualities that may not, in excess, be good for you. As just an aside, this is really consistent with the current string theory, which holds that all energies are but one energy. And so it has great foundation. This ancient wisdom has great foundation in contemporary science and physics as well. So we name these pairs, and these pairs of vibrational frequencies or qualities describe an aspect of what you see in nature. But, interestingly, they also describe an aspect of what you see in yourself. So here are some examples. Cold, hot, mobile, static, heavy, light, dry, oily, rough, slimy, smooth. It seems pretty simplistic, doesn't it? Yet in this simplicity is an amazing elegance and depth of understanding. These qualities make up nature's known recognized energy patterns, such as radiant or solar energy. So these qualities are seen in you and seen outside you. So there is a bridge. What this system does is it provides you a bridge for relating yourself to nature. So everybody's been cold, everybody's been hot, everybody has had their mind racing. Some people have had quiet where their mind is very subtly silent. Some people have had heaviness after a meal. Some people feel light and wish somebody would sit on them because they feel so light and airy. Everybody's experienced dry skin and the oiliness that occurs after lubricating the skin. And everybody has experienced slimy smooth, the common cold, the mucus that comes out of our nose when we're releasing this Kafa energy that we'll talk about. The energy patterns that occur because of the coalescence of qualities are energy patterns that occur in nature and in ourselves. So we can see Vada foods, we can see Vada dogs, Vada organizations, but we can also see people who are Vada energy patterns who are predominant in that way. And so the energy pattern of Vada that you see, this man on the left, is a person who is tall and lanky. Doesn't have to be tall, but he clearly is not heavily muscled. He's not carrying a lot of weight. In contrast is the Kafa energy pattern, who happens to be very thick, has great stamina, endurance, goes long periods of time, always has an element of subcutaneous fat. And then there's Pitta, who sits in the middle of this of these two types, and Pitta is an individual who is what's called a mesomorph. He's neither too thin and lanky, but he's not really heavily muscled either, and so he sits in between. And so these three energy patterns do things in our physiology and in our energy field physiology. Vada is the energy of movement. Anything that moves through the physiology is under the guise of this energy pattern of Vada. This includes thoughts as well. So movement of thought, movement of things in the body, all under Vada energy. Pitta is the energy pattern of transformation or metabolism. And so anything that's transformed, whether it's a thought that you're hearing right now from me, or whether it's a piece of broccoli that you ate during lunch, all of these things, both thought and molecules, are being transformed into you. So when you leave this talk today, you'll be transformed because of this energy pattern of Pitta. The energy pattern of Kafa is the energy of stability, and it keeps us grounded, keeps us stable, strong. It maintains the physiology and keeps us, in a manner of speaking, healthy and maintained in our physiology. These physiologic energy patterns combine these energetic qualities, that is, combine to form energy patterns, the energy patterns of Vada, Pitta, and Kafa. And the Vada is the energy pattern movement, as we said, and it has qualities, and these qualities are cold, light, mobile, dry, and rough. It is primarily localized in the GI tract in the colon, and examples of disease are constipation, and which painkillers worsen, and anxiety. So disease, from an energy science perspective, is derived from those energy patterns that are most prominent in one's physiology. So if you had a lot of Vada energy, you need all three of these energy patterns to function as a person. But if you had most prominent energy pattern Vada score, then you would see yourself more going out of whack with respect to diseases such as difficulty with sleep, feeling cold all the time, cold hands, cold feet, constipation, and the overactive bladder syndrome. Let's spend a little bit of time on the overactive bladder syndrome because it's a very confusing, poorly understood syndrome in medicine, but it's clearly understood from an energy science perspective. The overactive bladder is merely IC without the hot quality. The imbalance of hot and mobile produces IC, but if you just have the mobile quality being in your bladder, then you can develop the overactive bladder syndrome, which is frequency, urgency, with or without incontinence, getting up at night. It's often associated with IBS and or constipation because it's a Vada disorder. It's a problem of too much cold, light, dry, rough, and mobile in your physiology, all delivered, as we'll get to in a bit, by foods. So interstitial cystitis then is an imbalance of the qualities of hot, the burning pelvic pain, the burning on urination, the burning in the vagina, leading to debilitating vulvodynia. And notice that this burning pain, this pain that you're having, is the same kind of burn that you feel if you went out in the sun for long periods of time. Again, supporting the whole issue that when these elements become imbalanced outside you, they can also produce imbalances within you. So if you get really hot during the summer, then that can aggravate your IC. If you spin your wheels on a lot of different projects, doing multitasking, never taking time to settle, this enhances the mobile quality, just as foods may. And this will also produce frequency or an urgency with or without incontinence if you're so predisposed. This brings us to principle number 3. There is no pain without the Vada energy pattern. So the Vada energy pattern associated with Pitta, the hot quality, can lead to burning pain in the pelvis. But you can have pain without the burning if Vada energy is present. The bottom line for this is that we must reduce the Vada energy in order to control pain. And this is a very important factor that we'll come back to throughout the seminar series. By the way, this will control your frequency and urgency. When you control Vada energy, you'll control frequency, urgency, nocturia, all of the symptoms associated with overactive bladder or with IC. So the physiologic energy pattern of Kafa is this energy of stability, and it's most commonly seen in the stomach. It has the qualities of cool, heavy, static, oily, slimy, smooth. And the examples of its disease are the common cold, or heaviness, or inertia, or depression. These three energy patterns are mind-body energies. You know, there's a lot of mention in these days about the mind-body connection, but molecularly, you'll never be able to make a mind-body connection with a molecular model, which we're using today. The only way you'll be able to make sense out of this mind-body connection is using an energy science approach. Because in the energy model, the mind and body are intimately spliced. They cannot be separated. What happens in the body happens in the mind. What happens in the mind happens in the body. So if you're anxious, it can worsen your IC symptoms. If you're having a lot of burning and pain in your bladder, then this can affect the mind, making you frustrated, angry, or anxious and feeling fear. So a turbulent mind produces frequency and urgency. If there's trauma to the body, then the mind becomes turbulent. If Pitta is increased, with the hot quality, then you'll see the symptoms of burning and pain and in the bladder, but you also see the anger and resentment and all of the negative emotional responses that we see because of this particular mind-body connection. So IC is an inflammatory disease, isn't it? It's because the hot quality in excess in the energy body produces inflammation. Any place in the body, the hot quality will produce that. If the hot quality is localized in the lung fields, it becomes pneumonia. If it happens to be on the skin, it would be dermatitis. If it happens in the bladder, it's cystitis, or non-bacterial inflammatory change in the bladder is IC. So this hot quality affects the gag layer, and we have heard about the gag layer and its secretion by the underlying uroepithelium of the bladder. This hot quality causes damage to the gag layer. It essentially affects the Kafa molecular layer, which is a protective lining that protects the bladder. And when this hot quality affects the Kafa molecular layer, which is a protective layer, the gag layer being a Kafa molecular layer, then the damage is set, and then the expression of symptoms can occur. Kafa is, in its expressions vibrationally, cool, heavy, static, oily, and slimy smooth. The slimy smooth is actually a characteristic of the gag layer, but it's also the same slimy smooth, as we said earlier, that you experience when mucus occurs with the release of the Kafa energy during the common cold. So healing becomes the accumulation of these qualities. As we said earlier, these qualities become increased usually through the diet, but in many different ways, such as being exposed to the sun. So over time, what happens is these qualities of cold and mobile, or mobile and hot, become excessive. And then, so you first went to the doctor and he said, well, it sounds like you have a urinary tract infection. It must be that you have it because of your symptoms, but I don't see anything on your urinalysis. You must not be, you just must not be in its full-blown state yet. So we'll give you antibiotics. And you say, thank you very much. I appreciate the antibiotics because they made me feel better. Then you have another symptom. And this time, more hot, more mobile. Same story though. Oh, but, well, I'll give you antibiotics anyway because it sounds like you have a urinary tract infection. Then you come in one day and the doctor says, I think I'm going to culture your urine. And he cultures your urine and he finds an organism in the urine. And he says, ah, that was it. We caught it at just the right time. You're going to go on antibiotic. And so you're treated with antibiotic and the symptoms go away and you're grateful. But then you have another infection, apparently an infection. This time you get another urine culture and the doctor says, I'm really puzzled here because your culture doesn't show any infection. Now, this whole scenario, as you know, can be over a period of years, even in some people, decades, where it was hot mobile, hot mobile, hot mobile, and even with the expression of bacteria in the urine, it was still hot mobile that predisposed you to the bacteria in the bladder. But this scenario could also be just seen with endometriosis, a diagnosis that is questionable in people with IC. But the bottom line is you see there's ups and downs, good times and bad times, as you move through your clinical story that eventually leads to your diagnosis of IC. Now the symptoms become so severe that they take your breath away. And what happens then is the creation of flares. I'm going to see if I can write this out here. But these are essentially flare-like patterns that occur over and over and over again. So these flares are merely cyclical expressions of hot and mobile. And as we get into the next session, you'll see why they stay around and sometimes take off like this, because all of you, I think, have been experiencing this as well. That after a while, you've breached the ceiling, and now these imbalances that are occurring are almost all the time. And this continuation of symptoms leads to the over and over expression of daily IC without relief. Well, what does it look like here if we say add some healing? What would happen if we decided on the part of ourselves to release these qualities that are getting in our way? What would happen then? Well, it's quite interesting. You know, it's not like you have a dramatic shift and change to no symptoms, back to a state of what we would call balance. In this setting, what happens is you see a reduction in the frequency and in the intensity of your IC. You have maybe bad days, but they're not anything like what was going on up here. These bad days become less and less frequent, and the severity of the pain becomes less and less as you move closer and closer toward balance. This kind of scenario of healing is not something that, you know, we do an operation, remove your appendix, and you're feeling good the next day. Remove the cataract and you see better, voila. It's not like that. It's a slow process of release, but it's guaranteed that you will get better as you move along. So the energy science says that the origin of all disease occurs in the GI tract, that the accumulation and the increase of these qualities of mobile and hot occur first in the GI tract due to our food choices. So we are making unconsciously choices that are not good for us. But how would we know? How would we know? Because nobody told us that we were causing these problems. But in the end, that's the state of affairs of where we live in the 21st century with our current molecular science nutritional support. So the hot quality in the GI tract, if it gets extensively expressed, can turn out to be GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disease and irritable bowel syndrome or IBS. The mobile quality in the GI tract can lead to diarrhea or mixed with constipation to show up as IBS again. So principle number 7 then says that if foods are you and you are foods due to the commonality of qualities that we share with one another, share with the outside us that are common to us, these excess qualities then delivered through foods are the easiest way to go out of balance. So, you know, it's clear by many people who suffer from IC that making choices like hot spicy tomato sauce or hot chili peppers are just probably not such a good idea. And that's because these qualities are being delivered. When we remove them, we are grateful. So the energy science says that disease is defined as the imbalance of qualities. And we get these qualities through foods and their preparation, through incompatible food combinations that we'll talk about in the future, poor digestive strength or poor metabolism of the foods digested, and environmental factors such as it's really hot during the summer or it's very cool during the winter. The winter release in spring and summer can produce the common cold. The release from the summer heat in the fall could lead to excessive IC symptoms. So you see there is this mounting up, this building up, accumulation of energies that then the body wants to shed. It has to shed it. It's natural for the body to release these energy patterns because the body innately wants to be in balance. It wants to be in balance. And so whenever we give it excess qualities, what it does is it sheds them. And it does it in ways such as the common cold, or in menses in females, in which the dissipation of the hot quality, the hot and mobile quality, happens through menstrual flow. The nutritional formats that are available at icdiet.com or foodsheal.com, which are double energy pattern nutritional formats, can get you started in terms of knowing which foods are to be avoided. You know, broccoli, as an example, is a combination of energy patterns that have excess mobility in them to a certain degree. So if you ate broccoli on a regular basis, you would enhance your symptoms of IC. So paying attention to these lists is very, very helpful. And these formats then show you very specifically what to eat and not to eat. Currently, the nutritional formats that you receive that are based on molecular or anecdotal information are just that. They're not very helpful, and they're not very directive because they're not specific enough. And even when they are specific, they sometimes are based on anecdotal information and at best guesswork, which then leads to a very confused group of IC sufferers who say, well, you know, it works for Mary, but, you know, when I take that food, it just totally bothers me. And that's because there is a selection of foods that are based not on the person's energy pattern, which is foolproof, but on molecular hearsay. Spicy foods is a broad category, but who would consider that actually yogurt is spicy? And so when you look at this from this kind of viewpoint, you start looking at foods in a different way, and it helps create more direction and more groundedness in terms of your selection. You can be sure, without doubt, that these foods are going to be affecting you. Now, the problem here is this. Oh my gosh, my life is over. A nutritional format? Oh no, how can I deal with this? I mean, you're taking away all my favorites, all these restrictions on what I can eat. And then, of course, the response is, finally, I can't live like this. This is impossible. Well, the good news is that it's kind of not like forever, because these foods are actually foods that when you do other things that we'll talk about in session 2, these foods will actually not be as problematic as you may think. So that's a really important thing to tuck away in the back of your mind, is that these foods and their restrictions are actually not restrictions as much as I would call them guidelines. They're not rules to be abided by. They're guidelines. The closer you pay attention to these guidelines and the more you use them, the quicker you'll be able to overcome your symptoms of IC, and then you'll be able to, every once in a while, use a no item or use something that is in moderation. And this leads us to our last principle, that addiction is really possible in IC. And I'm not talking about drug addiction. I'm talking about being addicted to feeling good. Feeling good without symptoms. How would that be? What would that be like? How would that be? And the interesting thing about doing this work is that after a while you can't not do it, because you know that you're going to feel better and better, because you've now been shown that you're one of that 91% of people who have a 50% reduction in symptoms in 6 weeks. You know that this work is doing you, making you healthier as you move along with it. And the more you feel good, the more you want. And that's the addictive process of this kind of work. So changing nutrition can really be kind of easy. So the message here is this, is that you're not going to feel immediately good, but with the release of these qualities from the bladder and from the urinary tract, you'll simply start becoming better and better and better with a gradual release of symptoms, as we described earlier. And this is just with nutrition and aloe alone. We should talk just a little bit about aloe vera. I recommend that the gel is used over the juice, because the gel has what's called slow release. And this is very important because the hot quality is a Pitta quality, and the Pitta quality happens to be in the small intestine, not in the stomach. So if you take the juice, it may be absorbed in the stomach or even the first part of the small bowel, but by the time it gets to the major portion of the small bowel, it's all been digested and absorbed. But the aloe vera gel has a slow release, so it takes its effect deeper into the small bowel and the length of the small bowel. And as you do it over and over and over and over and over and over again, that effect carries farther and deeper into the length of the GI tract and into the small bowel. And this effect will then start cooling off the small bowel and reduce the hot quality. It reduces the hot quality because of its characteristics of cold, slimy, smooth, heavy, slow, dense, liquid, and static. These are all valuable qualities that counter the imbalancing qualities that are in your gut. But the beautiful thing about aloe is that it has more than just its effect on the gut. It has effect to all the tissues in the body, and because of that, it strengthens the body. The bodily tissues become strengthened because of aloe vera gel. So this is highly medicinal for somebody who has interstitial cystitis, and I really urge you to start using aloe on a regular basis. Now, what are the dosings? 1 to 2 tablespoons 3 times a day. And use that every day for the rest of the period that you're struggling with this problem. Make it a priority that you're going to use this on a regular basis. Now, some people don't like the gel because it happens to be the quality or the taste or the texture really bothers people. So in that situation, I've suggested that people use it with pomegranate juice, which is also anti-hot. It has a cooling quality as well. And beat it up so that you don't get the texture of the aloe gel, and then drink that. And that oftentimes will solve the problem of the gagging that sometimes occurs for people with aloe vera gel. I recommend that people get this by the gallon, and you can buy aloe vera gel by the gallon. It keeps well in the refrigerator. As a matter of fact, it travels well as well, and so taking it on trips can be very easy to do. Putting it in small containers, and in that way you can never be without it, and maintaining your dosing on a regular basis with it. Very few people develop some diarrhea with aloe, and if that happens for you, just back off on the dosing. So why does aloe work? Well, you know, if you have a sunburn, that inflammation occurs because of the sun, right? Well, the same burn that occurs outside that you would be treating with aloe, that same burn is occurring in your bladder. And that hot quality that is seen on the skin is the same hot quality that you see in the bladder, as glomerulations, or petechiae with bladder distension, or the pain that occurs with hydrodistension. These are all aspects of that burn. So if aloe is good for a sunburn, it clearly can be good for a bladder burn as well. And that's why aloe works so well. So to round it up, to sum it up, all of nature, we've said, is composed of these 10 pairs of vibrational frequencies that we name qualities. In other words, the same qualities that make us up make up nature. So in essence, food is us, and we are food. So the qualities inside us and the qualities outside us are all the same. And these qualities form physiologic energy patterns that we learned about: Vada, Pitta, and Kafa, the energy pattern of movement, the energy pattern of transformation, and that of stability. Disease, then, is an imbalance of these qualities. And these qualities in interstitial cystitis localize in the urinary tract as the hot and mobile qualities. And these qualities then are held there, not being able to be excreted, and then you're left with IC and its symptom complex. The hot quality causes the burning in the vagina, the burning in the bladder, the burning in the pelvic region, and the mobile quality causes the urinary frequency and urgency, stress incontinence, urge incontinence. All of these characteristics with nocturia that are also associated with the overactive bladder syndrome if there is no prominent hot quality present. So for homework, what I'd like you to do is go to the nutritional format at icdiet.com and print out the Pitta diet. It says, in essence, it's an anti-inflammatory diet. It's a cooling diet. So therefore, you'll get an understanding of what foods are heating and provoking your IC, and which foods, and by the way, those foods are sleepers. You look at some of these foods and you say, how can this be inflammatory? And yet they are. And so what you're really being gifted at the IC Diet website is a cooling diet, a diet to cool off your physiology. What also suggest you do is identify 2 to 3 foods that you commonly use that are in the no column or the avoid column. And then try to find substitutes for those foods in the favor column. Now you can also go to foodsheal.com, and there you'll find a nutritional format for Pitta Vada. Most of us on this call are Pitta Vadas. So use the Pitta Vada nutritional format, and what you'll find is that there are 3 columns, one for no, one for moderation, and one for the yes column, which says you can use it all the time. The moderation column there says use it maybe 2 times a week, but not excessively, because those foods in the moderation column will provoke you. And these formats at foodsheal.com are much more, are a little bit more lenient in their guidelines with respect to what you can eat. But I would really recommend that you pay attention to try to just stay in the yes column for most of the time, for now. The last thing is to ask, that I'd like to ask you to post your homework to the Facebook page. Just take a look at what you've been doing and go to the IC Solutions Facebook page that we've created, and there you can post your successes, ask for support, and there you'll also be able to access the course recordings. Well, that does it for the slide presentation, but now I'd like to entertain any questions that you guys might have regarding IC, and so why don't you go ahead and put in your questions now. Just type them in to the control panel. Here's a question regarding interstitial cystitis and why it can be painful all the time, because they say in the question that it appears that it's a wave-like phenomena. When these hot and mobile qualities become so accumulated, that line that we showed, let's see, I think what I'll try to do is go back to a slide that we had earlier. When these qualities begin to accumulate over time, get the pen working here. When these qualities accumulate over time, they produce symptoms. We release them here. We get rid of them here, and they leave the body. But as these qualities accumulate and they continue to rise in terms of their amount, you can see here that each line actually represents another level of accumulation of the qualities. The qualities are being increased in amount. And these qualities then start causing worsening of the symptom complex to the point that the body can no longer release enough of it in order for you to feel pretty comfortable. And so that's why you see a period of time when all of the symptoms that are starting to occur with respect to this rise and fall of hot and mobile, these you just can't get rid of enough of this accumulation. And there's another aspect that we'll talk about next time, which also plays a role in terms of keeping you up above the symptom score line so that you're symptomatic all the time. But that's another aspect that we'll cover on our next session. Here's a question regarding aloe. I'm allergic to a lot of different things, and I have a real problem with many different herbs. What can I substitute the aloe with? Sometimes these, quote, allergic reactions or problems are related to digestion. And we'll talk a lot about digestion in our next session. But for the present, if you cannot take the aloe because it causes certain symptoms, then what I would suggest is trying colostrum, which is an anti-inflammatory, but it also is a wonderful agent because it helps build the digestive fire, or it augments digestive strength. And so colostrum is a two-headed heavy hitter, and it's been seen to work wonders for people who have IC. So that's one way around it. The other thing is to do what we're talking about in session 2, where you actively do that work that we'll talk about, and then retry aloe and see what happens. Because my bias would be is that you'll be able to tolerate aloe without any problem. Here's a question about probiotics, what role they have in IC. This is an excellent question, very beautifully exposure to a problem that is, or to an issue that we'll address in the second session. I hate coming back to this whole thing again and again, telling you it's going to be in the second session, but trust me, all of these things will be answered. But probiotic, in the end, as with colostrum, can affect and improve digestive strength because that it enhances the digestion of the GI tract. Here's a question regarding specific food types, and do food types end up becoming a problem? I think that the questioner is actually asking, are some food groups just not good for IC? The simple answer to that is all food groups are open to IC. It's just that you have to be wary of being within the food groups. So, for example, the beverages in the food groups for people with IC, they should actually probably not have certain things within that food group called beverages. So coffee is a problem. Hot beverages, spicy beverages can be problematic. Carbonated drinks are particularly a problem. They're so common in our culture, yet for IC, it's just a terrible drink to use. With respect to coffee, Coffee aggravates all three doshas. I mean, all three energy patterns: Vada, Pitta, and Kafa. So it's not good for anybody, actually. Using substitute or grain coffees is a way to go. There are various things that various grain coffees that you can find online or at your health food stores. Ticino comes to mind as a brand that's been used, but there are other grain coffees as well. Or you can even make up your own if you're so inclined. Coffee is a stimulant, therefore it increases the mobile quality. And because of its bitterness, it can enhance the other qualities that are aggravating to IC. Here's a question regarding, I'll just read it here for a second. It's a long question. It's about the issue of the relationship of IBS and GERD with respect to IC, and also the questioner asks about fibromyalgia and how these are related. If you remember, these qualities they go and they accumulate in the GI tract, and then they energetically leave the GI tract to be distributed to different parts of the body. If these qualities come back and involve the wall of the GI tract, then you can see problems of long-standing GERD or gastroesophageal reflux. If they involve the small bowel, then these same qualities can affect the wall of the small bowel and cause chronic IBS. If these qualities go into the muscle or fibrous tissue of the body, then people can experience fibromyalgia. And with all of these things, or all of these various distributions of quality in the muscle, in the joints, in the gut wall, or in the bladder, you can see that the hot and mobile qualities can cause disease in multiple places of the body all at the same time. That's why one sees a confluence of types of disease when they're coming together. This is completely this gives us a complete understanding of why the molecular or matter science model of healing is so confused, and it confuses us. I mean, there's not an understanding of why GERD and IBS and fibromyalgia and chronic prostatitis are all associated with interstitial cystitis. But now it's clear to you. These symptoms occur because of these qualities being distributed to different parts of your body. Yes, here's a question regarding the idea about why is it that more people don't know about this. Well, the short answer to that is that's the reason that I'm doing this webinar, and that I'm actively talking about this on the internet. I'm just trying to get the word out to let people know that indeed there is a different way. I think that the biggest hurdle for most people will be whether they're willing to overcome their mental confusion and get some clarity to embark on this kind of a course. Sometimes it takes just an insight, a small insight, in order to start the path, sort of start down the path toward doing healing in a different way. But, you know, it's all up to each individual to decide on their own part whether they can trust the process, trust this different way of doing things in order to become empowered to heal their problem. This is a good question. This is evolving or involving these energy patterns, and the question is, if these energy patterns are prominent, can we get along without one of them? In other words, eliminate one of them. Well, you need all three of these energy patterns to live and function in the world. So all of these energy patterns will be expressed. But in what proportion they're expressed is basically what makes you up as a human. And these patterns of energy are actually closely related to our genetic makeup. So the genes dictate to us how we become energetically. As just an aside, the mind, the DNA, and the mind are actually one and the same. And the corollary to that is a very important one. When we do these lifestyle choice changes in our body, when we do these things that help us be healthier, such as the nutritional format or using aloe, they definitely impact the expression of our DNA in such a way that we become more in balance. So these changes that we're talking about, these simple things that we're talking about today, have great ramifications in terms of how they affect your mind and how you think about disease. We'll talk more about that as we move along through the webinar. Well, you know, there are no more questions here, so I think it's a wrap. And be sure to visit the Facebook page, put in your threads, put in your comments, and I'll be there talking with you in the meantime between now and our next session. So thanks again for your attention. I appreciate you all for coming and being and taking this empowering step to take your medical care to a new level of healing. Bye for now.